In this week's drive, we take a look inside a Formula One driver's helmet, see where high petrol prices are putting V8 SUVs, find out what's happening with sat-nav systems, and make a small boy's toy into a big boy's toy. All this and more in this week's Drive. Ferrari has contested every Formula One World Championship since it started in 1950, winning 14 drivers' and manufacturers' crowns, including last year. But things change fast in F1, and Ferrari are scrabbling to stay competitive after some aerodynamic rule changes.
This season, for us and also for the other teams, after a regulation change, you have a very aggressive and steep development program. The regulation change was made, obviously, to slow the cars down. But as a group of engineers, it gives us a very nice, fresh challenge to try and recover as much of that change as possible. So what we are doing is we are trying to update the car, ideally for every race, with new components to try and get back to at least the level that we had in terms of aerodynamic performance last year. It is an interesting battle, both on the track and also in everyone's wind tunnel.
The race to develop new parts and find an advantage is very intense.
It can only be one of very little compromise. You are after performance in the best possible way, but the aggression and the development rate is really impressive in terms of the amount of parts we test, the amount of hours we run in the wind tunnel, but also in terms of credit to the full-scale production people, the amount of parts we change and how often on the full-scale car.
After 10 years of 3-litre V10 engines, next year the teams will all run 2.4-litre V8s, making the cars slower and, in theory, safer.
Yes, we have done some early sessions in evaluating some of the packaging constraints that will change. So we have the new V8 engine for next year, and we have to evaluate some of the fundamental layout of the car to try and make sure we make the initial steps correct for the ongoing development. But yes, we are already well on the way to developing next year's car.
But by now, we know that the red cars won't wear the champion's number 1 next year. Any racing driver's helmet is his single most important piece of safety equipment. Made of a mix of different materials, the modern helmet provides the greatest possible strength at the lowest possible weight.
Formula One helmets are naturally very different from normal crash helmets. The sport's governing body, the FIA, has brought in a new standard that subjects these helmets to some very tough tests, which of course they have to pass. Drivers would naturally like to have their helmets as light and comfortable as possible. And that means, of course, that the companies making these special helmets and special designs have an incredibly difficult job.
Barely 1 kilogram in weight, the helmet has to incorporate several different components and perform at the very highest level. In the cockpit, the driver is perfectly integrated into the car's overall aerodynamics. The airflow around the driver's head mustn't cause any turbulence for a number of reasons.
There's a very strong upward pull on the driver's head, an enormous upward force that has to be held down with spoilers or by using a specially shaped helmet. That's force number 1. Force number 2 comes from acceleration, from braking and from cornering. It's often more than 5G, and in total in a Grand Prix it can add up to 2,500 G. So if I can make the helmet lighter, I can substantially reduce the strain for the driver.
Improved driver comfort means better concentration and higher personal performance at the very highest level. The construction of the helmet shell is worked out by computer and then individually adapted to each driver's head. Despite high ambient and cockpit temperatures, integrated cooling systems help to limit sweating by the driver and help stop his visor from getting steamed up, no matter how torrid the action.
Well, of course, comfort is very important for the driver, that he doesn't really feel like he has really the helmet on. You know, of course, we have the strap and we have to make sure that the helmet is is not lifting when we're driving at high speeds, because sometimes the helmet can move around, and that's not ideal for the driver. But and of course you're working closely with the helmet manufacturer to make sure that, of course, it's always safe. You can have a very, very comfortable and light helmet, but if it's not safe enough, then it's not recommended.
The helmet's primary task is naturally its protective function. Drop and crash tests are used to check strength and resistance to various types of impacts. Also obligatory is a helmet's ability to protect the driver in a fire. Helmets must be able to withstand 1,000 degrees Celsius for 45 seconds. Underneath the various drivers' personalized paint schemes, a helmet's construction in detail looks like this. Every layer has its own very special task and must work in conjunction with all the others. The outer layer is made of a carbon mix. Kevlar and various other materials help make the helmet extremely robust and very light. Fire-resistant material on the inside protects the driver in the event of a fire. It's called Nomex, the same material that racing overalls are made of. Foam material behind it makes sure the helmet is comfortable and, above all, a perfect firm fit. The next layer is made of shock-absorbent foam. This absorbs any shock waves and spreads the impact evenly across the helmet's full surface. There are rules and requirements for the visor too. It has to be non-reflective, resistant to penetration, and keep wind and water out of the driver's eyes. Tear-off strips are attached to it so that dirt or oil can be cleared with one hand. Inside the helmet, there's the driver's drinking tube, supplying his preferred drink by pressing a button on the steering wheel, and a microphone for the car-to-pit radio. For the drivers, their helmet is also a very personal trademark, and individual designs know no bounds. Drivers may get through several helmets in a single season. Just dropping one is enough reason to throw it away. When it comes to safety, there can be no compromise. We go now to the ancient English town of Winchester, the test bed for a 21st century experiment in cleaner transport. This ordinary-looking bus pumps out of its exhaust a fraction of the polluting chemicals of a normal bus, thanks to a special additive in the engine.
The European Union have set a new standard for exhaust emissions, which comes into effect in September 2006. We're hoping to achieve that, which is a reduction, I think, of about 70% in normal nitrous oxide levels. So it's very big, very substantial. And not only that, the initial tests suggest that we will also get something like a 5% improvement in fuel economy. So we'll actually be saving on natural resources as well as having better emissions.
The additive is urea, a chemical found in sheep urine. The ammonia in the urea turns nitrous oxides in the exhaust fumes into harmless steam. If the test proves successful, the technology will be extended to buses across the country.
The urea that we use is actually chemically manufactured, and that's purely on economic grounds. It could be distilled from agricultural byproducts, and if you really wanted to get into that, I'm told that pigs would actually be better than sheep. But the costs of collecting and distilling are such that it's more economical to use a chemically manufactured version.
The Regional Council is funding the urea additive trial. Winchester is one of 4 European cities involved in a long-term programme called Miracles, which is aimed at improving air quality and reducing the corrosive air which is destroying many of Europe's older landmarks. If the bus emission trial proves successful, it could provide a cheap and effective way of improving air quality in cities everywhere. Global Positioning Systems, or GPS, were once seen as space-age technology with out-of-this-world price tags. But nowadays there are miniature GPS systems in passenger cars, commercial and delivery vehicles, and even on motorcycles.
Our time is so precious these days, we don't want to spend it sitting in traffic. And some of the new navigation systems that are becoming so affordable, now you can buy a handheld navigation system for around $100. So people use them in their boats when they go camping and when they want to find where they've been on a great road trip.
Accurate to within a few meters and at a fraction of the price of just a few years ago, what makes navigation systems more attractive to consumers these days is how adaptable they've become and how much technology is packed into a tiny space.
This system actually allows you to see scheduled and unscheduled incidents, whether or not that's lane closures or accidents that occur or disabled vehicles.
Cadillac's navigation system works with XM radio to give up-to-the-minute traffic reports as well as directions. XM nav traffic comes from the same source as the local radio and TV stations use, but with this technology, the driver doesn't need to wait hoping to hear a traffic report from his or her route.
Before you even start on your way, you can scroll through and see what may be along your path, and you can decide to take a different path to get to your destination fast.
Navigation programs can also be added to a personal digital assistant or PDA by adding GPS hard and software upgrades for marine navigation, golf course mapping, and use on off-the-beaten-track cycle or hiking trails. It's no surprise that car companies everywhere are facing the problem of what to do when supplies of petrol either run out or become so expensive as to no longer be viable. The GMC Graphite concept car is a look at the future of SUVs powered by a dual-mode hybrid system. It's described as a concept, but in reality it previews the hybrid petrol-electric powertrain to be fitted in the GMC Yukon and Chevrolet Tahoe in 2007. Designed and built at the Vauxhall Centre at Coventry in the UK, the Graphite combines a 5.3-litre V8 with displacement-on-demand technology, which shuts down some cylinders when cruising, and a 300-volt battery pack. GM promises fuel savings of around 25%. This hybrid powertrain is suitable for use in four- or two-wheel drive cars, trucks and other vehicles, and it's claimed to be particularly good at saving fuel in low-speed, stop-go driving, when the electric motor does much of the work, reducing emissions and fuel consumption. The V8 engine provides power only at high speeds, when sudden acceleration is required, or when under heavy demand, such as when towing a trailer. The CVT, or constant velocity transmission, has only 3 modes: drive, reverse and park. The goal is to develop a fuel cell propulsion system by 2010 that's competitive with internal combustion engines in terms of performance and dependability. Over the last 10 years, there's been a shift in the way people look at cars, trucks and SUVs. No longer just a means of getting from here to there, more and more vehicles are seen as fashion accessories, making statements about their owners, extensions of their personalities. And the beneficiary of this newfound love of cars has been the specialty automotive equipment industry, makers of products such as custom wheels, advanced electronics and performance-enhancing parts.
It's something I love to do. It's a passion turned into a hobby, turned into a career.
Keith Lozier started off turning his used Chevy Cavalier into the envy of the neighborhood, and soon he ditched his career as a computer technician and opened a specialty garage, turning his passion for hot rodding into a successful business.
When I first started racing, I was racing a bone-stock, slow, automatic CRX car that I invested, very little money in, but it was consistent, it ran well, and I won races with it. My car right here is Chevy Cobalt Phase 5 Dragster.
You may be surprised to know that 22-year-old Brittany Chindle is a seasoned drag racer, but she and Keith both represent an exploding segment in the specialty parts business. That is, young, 16 to 24, gender and ethnic diverse, and very attractive to many companies, including one of the biggest.
The youth market is important because we know how much brand loyalty means in buying cars. And we know that this youth market loves to tune their cars. And so GM Racing has come out with their Sport Compact Build Book. It'll let you take your Ecotec engine from stock to putting a supercharger in it, to doing an in-car rod and piston swap, and everything up to a 1,400 horsepower, race-ready, professional-level drag engine.
American industry insiders say there hasn't been a young generation with this much interest in automotive personalization since the original hot rodders of the 1950s. And some car makers are looking ahead and designing cars that will be built to be easily customized. Rough roads, honking horns, loud engines. Most drivers have to tune noise out of their daily journeys. But what if the car could do that for you?
There's a very, very big trend to make cars quieter because to the average consumer, a silent or a quiet interior is a direct equator of quality. The technologies include engine damping, foam-like materials that are injected into the steel frame of the vehicle when they build it. Some cars have actually gone to thicker side glass.
Just as Mercedes did a decade ago, the new Buick LaCrosse has laminated side glass, actually 2 panes of glass with a lamination in the middle, to reduce noise and block ultraviolet rays, preserving your skin and the vehicle's interior. And what about those annoying squeaks and rattles? Every major manufacturer has the equivalent of a squeak and rattle shaker room.
The power of this room is that it lets us duplicate any road profile that we wish within reason. It lets us run that same profile over and over and over until we've located the source of that squeak or rattle. When we're inside the vehicle on the shaker, our squeak and rattle engineer will sometimes use his bare ears. Very often we'll use a sound level meter, and sometimes some sort of an amplifying device that will help him find those squeaks and rattles inside the vehicle and localize them and fix them.
Manufacturers are also paying a lot of attention to the tire tread. There's an awful lot of noise that comes into the vehicle from the tires when you're cruising at speed. So the manufacturers work with the tire manufacturers to design tire compounds, and particularly the actual pattern of the tread, to provide good traction in various conditions, but also to reduce the noise of the tire as it's rolling.
Not everyone wants a completely silent car. Sports car drivers want to hear that engine roar, but for most drivers, a little extra peace and quiet on their daily commute would be nice. Thank you. Although their origins stir controversy across the region, one thing is for sure. Falafel, the little chickpea fritters so beloved around the eastern Mediterranean, are serving up more than just a tasty snack. Forget 98-octane petrol. Falafel power is here as an Israeli environmentalist turns the favorite Middle Eastern snack into vehicle fuel.
Falafel oil is the most abundant oil in Israel. Israelis love their falafel, and all of us eat lots of it. Therefore, falafel shops and falafel stalls are the main source of used cooking oil. It's the cheapest feedstock we could use for making biodiesel. It's a very good feedstock. Hopefully, most of the falafels change their oil frequently enough so we can have good oil for good biodiesel. And it's a national pride. People love this car and love this idea because it also connects them to the falafel, which is our national food.
Israeli scientist Oren Biger says biodiesel is the perfect solution in Israel, which has no natural oil reserves of its own and is not supplied by many Arab countries who refuse to deal with the Jewish state.
Here in the Jewish state, we have even a further problem because the oil is mainly owned by our enemies or by countries who don't want to make peace with us. And biodiesel can be grown locally. It's very, very clean burning. It doesn't pollute the earth or the water in case it spills. And it's easy to do at home without being dependent on big companies, big corporates.
Biger says the oil used to cook falafel is the cheapest and most convenient way to produce environmentally friendly fuel in Israel. He's devised a system that converts the used oil into biodiesel, a greener alternative to fossil fuels like petrol and diesel. Biodiesel can be made from a variety of oils and fats, but has similar combustion properties to petroleum diesel, which means it can be used in most current car engines. The use and production of biodiesel is increasing rapidly, especially in Europe, the United States and Asia. However, it still makes up only a small proportion of fuel sold due to the high costs of biodiesel production compared to traditional fuels. While increasing Israel's self-sufficiency in fuel is one positive spin-off, Biger has his eyes on the bigger picture. A cleaner, greener world where individuals can address their own energy needs while enjoying a tasty snack. Since the rebirth of the Chrysler Hemi engine, it's become a brand within a brand, powering Chrysler, Jeep and Dodge vehicles. In celebration of the legendary engine, Chrysler launched a contest asking the question, if you could use the 5.7-litre V8 in anything, what would it be?
The What Can You Hemi contest was a great new idea that we went out to everybody in the US and Canada, and we basically said, now if you had the opportunity to put a Hemi engine in anything you wanted to do, the coolest idea, the most off-the-wall, out-of-the-box thinking, what would you do?
Contestants had to submit their idea in a brief essay and support it with a sketch. More than 360 aspiring inventors submitted their wildest ideas before the deadline. The top 5 ideas were turned from sketches into the real thing, complete with brand new engines created by technicians normally working on concept cars at Chrysler's headquarters in Michigan.
Well, today it's my privilege to show you a Hemi engine as you've never seen it before. You'll see ingenuity, creativity, and gas in the veins enthusiasm at work when we unveil 5 amazing inventions that all resulted from the What Can You Hemi contest. It's the Hemi snowblower. Okay, let's pull the cover off of this thing.
In snowy North America, just keeping the area near the house clear enough to walk around can be an irksome daily chore for months. Not anymore.
When they announced the contest, I was looking out the window, it was snowing, and I thought, when I get home tonight, I'm going to have to shovel the driveway again. The light bulb went on, and I said, you know, a Hemi on a snowblower, so that this would be a lot quicker thing to do. So they built the invention. They did a fantastic job. It's bigger than my driveway, I think. And, you know, with the 5.7 liter Hemi on it, I think I ought to be able to throw the snow into the next block.
So let's pull the cover off and take a look at the Hemi Go Round.
This fairground ride will appeal to kids of all ages. The engine spins the turntable at 8 RPM, while most carousels only do about 4 or 5.
Well, you see the merry-go-rounds and carousels at theme parks and stuff, and they're always kind of boring, and there's nothing on them for adults, so I figured we'd power it up with a Hemi and make it more exciting for everybody.
Let's pull the silk off here of the Hemi on ice.
The propane-powered engine of this ice resurfacer has been replaced with a Hemi, pumped up with some Mopar performance headers and a baller exhaust system, and customized with a Dodge Viper seat for the operator.
So let's hear it. Let's...
Oh, yeah, that's cool. All right. The most boring time at a hockey game is intermission. And so I looked into how can we make the intermission time exciting. And so I thought of, hey, we got to get the ice resurfacer Hemi'd up.
And doesn't every office need a V8-powered paper shredder?
It's beautiful. I mean, it's really, really cool. And then they added the pencil sharpener. I said it was an optional extra, but they added a little Hemi-powered pencil sharpener on top. They did a great job.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Hemi trike. Dodge Magnum to 0 to 60 in just under 6 seconds. Just think about what it'll be able to do on a Hemi trike.
It came from my childhood, basically. We had big trikes when we were kids, and that's where the idea stemmed from. It blew me away. It's one thing to see it on paper, but then, you know, to see it actually made, and everything's proportionally scaled. So the handlebars in the front tire just blow me away. Just the sheer scale of it. You just can't imagine it being that big. So that was a really cool thing about it.
The winner, and the judges have selected in the envelope. Well, let's see. It's Marcus Braun with the Hemi trike. Marcus! Marcus, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
With a custom 4-foot front wheel and Goodyear slicks to keep it stable under heavy acceleration, it's childhood fun. Supersized.
Prize was a Chrysler vehicle with a Hemi, and I chose the 300C.
The Hemi engine appeared in 1951 when Chrysler joined the post-war horsepower race, and despite high manufacturing costs, it remained available for racing use ever since. Chrysler introduced the all-new 5.7-litre Hemi V8 in 2002 and has sold over 500,000 of them. So, whether you're battling to stay competitive, standing on a rock in a wet place, or just getting around on the smell of a pig farm, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.